Of all the films we've looked at so far in the Secret Lore, there may be no story more chilling than that of Space Chimps. At first glance, it seems like a mediocre children's film, but upon closer inspection, it rivals the works of both David Lynch and Macaulay Culkin. Space Chimps is not really a film, but instead, it is a warning, an omen of things that may be and yet don't need to be. It may sound confusing, but all things are at first in the Secret Lore. The first piece of secret lore we must look at concerns Houston and Comet's relationship. Houston is an older chimp that has a love of science and inventing. He acts as a father figure to Ham as well as a leader for the space chimps when they go on their mission. He acts as the mission control alongside a young chimp called Comet. Houston and Comet spend the majority of the film together inventing things to help the space chimps get home. And one of these inventions just so happened to be love. Comet and Houston spent a long time together, bonding over their love of science, and it just so happened that some chemistry was taking place between the two of them. You see, Houston was known for his taste in twinks, or as they're known in the chimp nomenclature, twunkies. Houston had seen many twunkies in his days, but never came across one that he had so much in common with, and this animal attraction he had toward Comet quickly changed to something more. As for Comet, the knowledge and life experience of an older chimp like Houston was very arousing. The two chimps made love multiple times while the other chimps were in space, but sadly, this relationship was not long for the world. Houston and Comet were ready to spend the rest of their lives together by the end of the sequel film, Space Chimps 2: Zartog Strikes Back. But sadly, one night while Comet was bottoming for Houston, something snapped in the old chimp. As Houston pumped back and forth, fucking Comet's monkey brains out, he placed his hands on the sides of Comet's head. As Houston reached the crescendo of their lovemaking, he had what doctors would later diagnose as a sharp fight-or-flight reaction from overstimulation. Houston performed his last pump and gripped tightly on the sides of Comet's weak, twunky head, and reeled backwards, ripping Comet's head off his shoulders. After the event, Houston was heartbroken. What these two chimps felt for each other was more than just animalistic attraction, but real love and affection. Houston spent many long minutes processing Comet's death, but then quickly found solace in the arms of the twunky paramedic that stuffed Comet into the body bag. This piece of secret lore is one I had wished made it into the film. It does justice to two characters that truly had a special bond forming throughout the film. But as with many things in the secret lore, the cover-up for this piece of the story may never be explained. Our next piece of secret lore concerns the villain of the film, Zartog, and how he was corrupted by humanity. It's no secret that Space Chimps is a film that has a distaste for humanity. Even our protagonist thinks of themselves as above humanity. At first, the comments made in the film are seen as just jokes at the expense of humanity. But upon closer inspection, it becomes clear that humans caused all of the problems the Space Chimps had to solve. And to explain how humans set this whole story in motion, we must first look at the villain, Zartog. Zartog is an outcast. He looks different, is abrasive, and doesn't like to be bothered. He has secluded himself away from the rest of the village, not because he's dangerous, but because he wants to be left alone. The first time we see Zartog, he is angry because some of the villagers are trespassing on his property, which is a fair thing to be angry about. He then proceeds to destroy the Flutter Eye, as it is called in this universe, which is the alien version of a moth, because that is what caused the crime of trespassing to take place. Zartog is an outcast, but he is not a villain, until his house is destroyed by the human rover. After Zartog's home is destroyed, he is then inspected and informed of Earth. The Earth rover informs Zartog all about humanity, flashing images quickly across the screen. After seeing these images, Zartog exclaims, "I want to live like them." Zartog was directly influenced by the history of mankind, and his immediate way of fulfilling his dream of living like humanity was by destroying the village that annoyed him and establishing himself as a dictator amongst his brethren. Since Zartog most likely was given an account of all human history on the rover, then he most likely saw all of the wars and great injustices that humankind carried out. Pairing the history of humankind with quick hypnotic images and calming music brainwashed Zartog into an alien Hitler, and to make matters worse, humanity sent him a rover that could give him an incredible amount of power that Zartog quickly uses to take over the planet. After being influenced by humanity, Zartog went from an outcast to a dictator bent on controlling his alien world. This piece of secret lore is closer to the surface than most points we look at, but it still gets overlooked thanks to the film's clever disguise as a children's animated comedy. Still, Zartog's story shows how this film questions humanity itself and how quickly power can corrupt anyone. This theme of humanity is persistent throughout Space Chimps, and on our third and final point, we see how this human corruption leads to the downfall of Earth. As I stated in our previous point, the titular Space Chimps are quite critical of humanity throughout the film. The Space Chimps comment on the human creations and the damage that it's caused, and the possible closure of the space program. They comment on these things with great distaste throughout the film, and upon the Space Chimps' return to Earth, it seems they've reached their boiling point. At the end of the first film, we hear one of the scientists say that they need to give these Space Chimps new IQ tests to see how they were able to pull off a mission that, in the mind of human scientists, should have been suicide. And by the end of the second film, there was now no question in the mind of the NASA scientists. These Space Chimps had evolved intellect far beyond human comprehension. And now that chimps were the superior species, it was time for them to have humanity answer for its many crimes. What follows in the Space Chimps cinematic universe is a war that raged on for 70 years. By the end of what would quickly become known as the Great Chimpening, Earth was left as a wasteland, and humanity was all but defeated. The Space Chimps used their superior knowledge to lift their kind off Earth and return to the alien world they had visited so long ago. With their new alien home, the chimps would now prosper and live in harmony with the many species they had once saved. As for humanity, they are presumed extinct, but no creature has returned to Earth after the Great Chimpening. However, the events of the Great Chimpening did have a major ripple effect throughout the universe. The Space Chimps were not even close to finishing with their evolutionary path. As time went on, the Space Chimps expanded, repopulated, and slowly but surely began perfecting the universe. As the Space Chimps' influence expanded, so too did their intellect, their size, their strength, and eventually they reached the status of gods, unstoppable beings that all other species worshipped. The Space Chimps still rule to this day, keeping the peace throughout the entire universe, using Earth and humanity as an example of what can happen if corruption and failure is put in the forefront of creation. These three pieces of secret lore paint an interesting picture of loss, love, and destruction. It really is a shame that so many people have written this film off as a simple children's film when it truly has so much more to offer. However, for this episode of The Secret Lore, this is all Space Chimps will be offering us today. Thank you very much for watching this episode of The Secret Lore. If there is a film you want gone over in deep, excruciating detail, please post it in the comment section below. And if you have yet to immerse yourself in the other episodes of The Secret Lore, they will be linked at the end of this episode. But be warned, for that much information and power and knowledge could be dangerous to take in all at once. Until next time on The Secret Lore.